The sun is already setting behind the trees when Pak's car pulls into the gate of his house. A long driveway leads to the front door, and he looks out the window without much expression. Pak is tired after the negotiations, but he keeps his back straight, as always. He is 29 years old, his short blonde hair is neatly combed, and even after 3 hours in the car, his clothes look like he just stepped out of a fitting room. He doesn't like clutter. Not in his business, not in his home. The driver stops at the steps. Pak gets out himself. Without waiting for the door to be opened, he adjusts the sleeve of his jacket and climbs the wide steps. Inside, the hall smells of wood and flowers. He notices that the vases have been updated. They used to hold white lilies, but now they're filled with hydrangeas. Not his choice, but it's nice. So Emily had redecorated again. She emerged from the living room almost immediately. Emily was wearing a floor-length beige dress. The silk flowed softly over her body, without a single crease. Her straight, waist-length black hair was loose and gleamed in the lamplight. Her skin is such a deep shade that beige seems to glow against it. She smiles. "You're earlier than I thought," Emily says quietly. She moves closer, and he can smell her, something sweet and clean. Puck looks at her carefully. Emily is tall, slender, and moves gracefully, as if she always knows how to look her best in the room. She's 28 and has been his wife for 3 years. She's the kind of woman people turn heads at on the street. He knows this and has never been jealous, because he trusted, or because he was confident. "It was all over quickly," he replies. "The partners agreed to my terms." "I had no doubt," Emily says, touching his shoulder with her fingertips. The gesture is brief, almost formal, like a good actress who knows her lines. Puck kisses her on the cheek, because that's the custom, and walks into the living room. The house is immaculate. The floors shine. The curtains are tied perfectly. There's fresh fruit on the table. Everything is in its place. He sits down in the chair and exhales. Emily sits down opposite him on the sofa. She crosses her legs, and her dress reveals her ankle. Puck looks at her for a few seconds. She's beautiful. That's a fact. But today, something's off. He can't figure out what. Maybe, is she too calm? Or is she trying too hard to look relaxed? "You look good," he says. "Thank you. I spent a long time choosing a dress today. I thought we were having dinner together." "Dinner." Pak nods. He rings the small bell on the table. The sound is thin, but sharp. A minute later, Chan appears in the doorway. He's a butler in his work uniform. Dark trousers, a white shirt, and a vest. He's 33 years old, Korean, short but lean. His face is calm, emotionless. He bows first to Puck, then to Emily. "Dinner is in an hour," says Chan. "The menu has been agreed upon with the lady." "Okay," replies Park. "You're free to go." Chan disappears as silently as he appeared. Emily watches him go. 1 moment, half a second, but Park notices. He doesn't pay any attention to it. After all, Chan has been working in the house for 2 years, and during that time there haven't been a single problem. He's polite, precise, and doesn't ask unnecessary questions. The perfect butler. Park gets up and goes to the window. The living room overlooks the garden. The fountain in the center is working. Water flows down 3 bowls. The paths are covered with white gravel. The bushes are trimmed into neat circles. Everything is like a park. He loves this view, especially in the evening, when the sun touches the treetops and the shadows become long. "Maybe we should go for a walk before dinner," Emily suggests. She comes up behind him and puts her hands on his shoulders. Puck feels the warmth of her palms through the fabric of his jacket. He covers one of her hands with his. "Go ahead." They walk out the glass door onto the terrace, and then down into the garden. The gravel crunches under his feet. Emily walks slightly behind him, and he hears the rustle of her dress. The air is warm, smelling of earth and roses. Puck turns the corner of the house, and there, by the fountain, stands Chan. He's holding a list and saying something to the gardener, who's squatting by the flower bed. The gardener nods and adjusts the soil around a bush. Chan looks up and sees Park. He bows quickly and steps back, making way. Emily passes him, and less than a meter separates them. Pak walks forward without turning around. He hears Chan quietly say to the gardener, "We'll finish tomorrow." Pak thinks, just a normal day's work. The butler keeps order in the courtyard. That's his job. Nothing out of the ordinary. They reach the fountain. Pak stops. He looks at the water. Emily stands next to him, her hair almost touching his elbow. "The garden is beautiful," she says. "You deserve all the credit. It's not just me. The gardener is working hard, and Chan too." She says the butler's name too easily. It's as if it's just slipping out of her mouth. Park nods without turning his head. He looks at his reflection in the water, short blonde hair, a firm jawline. He likes what he sees. He's confident. Maybe that's why he misses the next sign. "You're tired," Emily says. "Let's go back. Dinner's soon." She takes his arm, and they walk back. Park looks back for a moment. Chan has already left, the gardener too. Only the fountain continues its work. The water flows, and nothing is heard except this sound. The evening passes quietly. They dine in the small dining room. Chan serves soup, then fish, then meat. Every movement is measured. He pours wine into Emily's glass, then Pax. Not a single unnecessary sound. Pak talks about the trip. No names, no details, just the gist. Emily listens, nods, sometimes asks questions. She knows her husband is involved in serious matters. She never interferes in his affairs. This is one of the reasons why he chose her. After dinner, Puck goes to his office. He needs to look over some papers. Emily says she'll go to bed early because she has a headache. He wishes her good night, and they part ways. The office is quiet. Only the clock on the wall ticks away the seconds. Puck works until midnight, then turns off the light and goes to the bedroom. Emily is already asleep. Her black hair is scattered across the pillow. A beige dress is hanging over the back of a chair. She's wearing a long nightgown, and her shoulder is exposed. Puck looks at her and thinks, everything is fine. Everything is right. He undresses, lies down next to her, and closes his eyes. At night, he wakes up to silence. At first, he doesn't understand what exactly woke him. Then he realizes the room next to him is empty. Emily's place is cold. He sits up in bed and looks at the clock. 2 a.m. He calls her quietly, then louder. No one answers. Puck gets up and goes to the window. The moon is shining brightly, and the garden is visible almost like day. And there, below, he sees a figure in white. Emily. She is walking barefoot along the gravel path. Her nightgown is long, her hair fluttering. She walks toward the garden, slowly, as if she's taking a stroll. Puck looks at her for a minute, then another minute. She stops at a bench, sits down, and raises her face to the sky. He could go out, ask her why she's not sleeping, but Puck decides not to. Women sometimes need to be alone. He returns to bed and waits. Half an hour later, the bedroom door opens, and Emily lies down quietly. Her feet are cold. She presses her back against him and falls asleep almost immediately. In the morning, Puck is drinking coffee in the dining room. Emily comes down later, in a robe, her hair pulled back into a low bun. She looks rested. "You went out last night," he says. She pauses for a second, then she smiles. "Yeah, I couldn't sleep. I decided to get some air. Did you see?" "I saw. Sorry I woke you. I tried to walk quietly. It's okay." Puck pushes his cup away. "Just tell me next time." "I was worried." "Not again," she promises. She sits down opposite him and pours herself some juice. Her hands don't shake. Her voice is even. Puck looks at her and thinks she's beautiful even without makeup. He doesn't know that this night walk was neither casual nor innocent. He doesn't know that she wasn't going out to the stars, and that the shadow he mistook for a bush wasn't a bush. Emily sips her juice. She smiles at Puck, and he smiles back. The house is once again filled with the sounds of morning. Chan brings fresh newspapers and places them on the edge of the table. Park picks up the top one and begins to read. Emily looks at Chan. One quick glance over the edge of the newspaper. Chan looks back. Not a word, not a gesture, but the air between them becomes different, heavy. Park doesn't notice it. He reads the headlines and thinks about business. His day is scheduled down to the minute. On the second day after Park's return, Emily behaves as usual. She has breakfast with him, then walks him to the door. He gets in the car and drives away. Immediately after his departure, Emily doesn't go to the bedroom or call her friends. She heads to the garden. There's a gardener working there, a man in his 50s with a wrinkled face. He's replanting bushes. Emily approaches him and asks, "What kind of rose grows best in the shade?" The gardener is surprised. She's never been interested in plants before, but he answers in detail, naming 3 names. Emily listens attentively, nods, and clarifies. But her eyes aren't on the gardener. They're on the garage, where Chan is checking the tires on Park's car. Park returns that evening. Emily is wearing her beige dress again. Her hair is down. She greets him at the door. "I talked to the gardener today," she says. "About what?" "About flowers. The yard is beautiful, but I think there aren't enough roses." Park takes off his jacket and hands it to Chan, who waits silently in the hall. Emily continues. "He said we could plant new bushes by the east wall. There's only morning sun there." "Okay," says Pak. "Do whatever you want. It's your home." She smiles. The warmest smile she's seen in days. Pak thinks she just enjoys working on the house. He likes that she finds something to do. He doesn't know that the conversation with the gardener was just a cover, that she needed an excuse to approach the utility wing, that she was waiting for Chan to come out of the garage. The next day, Emily orders 12 rose bushes, then 20 new plant pots, then 3 bags of special soil, then garden figurines, little stone rabbits. She spends hours looking through catalogs. She calls the nursery and talks to the manager for so long that he memorizes her voice. "Why do you need so much?" asks Puck over dinner. "I want the yard to be the most beautiful in town," Emily replies. She says it easily, like a capricious girl. Puck grins and shakes his head. He doesn't mind. Money is no problem. Let him have fun. Chan brings dessert. Emily looks at his hands. Long fingers, clean nails. He places the plate in front of her, and his finger accidentally touches her elbow. Was it an accident? Park looks at the phone screen. He doesn't see. Emily blushes. It's not noticeable under her dark skin, but she feels the heat. She tilts her head and says, "New flowers will arrive tomorrow morning. Make sure they are placed in the shade before planting." "Okay, mistress," Chan replies. He leaves. Emily looks at the door. Park looks up from his phone and sees her face. Displeased? Thoughtful? He can't tell. "Is something wrong?" he asks. "Everything's fine," she says. But during dinner, she drops her fork. The metal clinks against the plate. Chan appears 10 seconds later and serves a new one. Emily doesn't look at him. She doesn't look at Park. She's staring at the wall. Park notices that she hasn't finished dessert. Emily always likes sweets. "Are you tired?" he asks. "A little. My head hurts." "Go to bed early?" "I will." She gets up from the table, wishes him good night, and leaves. Chan watches her go. Park doesn't see it because his phone is ringing again. He goes out into the hallway to answer it. Chan is left alone in the dining room. He clears Emily's plate and notices that the fork is not on the edge, but in the center. That's how she leaves her marks. Chan takes the fork and puts it in his pocket. Then he washes the dishes as if nothing happened. 2 days later, Puck breaks the news over breakfast. "I need to go away for 3 days. A city in the south. Meeting new partners." He says this calmly. Emily pours herself some tea. Her hand doesn't shake, but he sees her eyes. For a moment, something quick and bright flashes in them. Relief, pure, unadulterated relief. Puck notices it, but he thinks she's tired of sitting at home alone. She's glad her husband is leaving and she'll be able to do what she wants without his supervision. This is normal. Even he himself is sometimes glad to be alone. He gets up from the table and goes to pack. Emily remains in the dining room. She finishes her tea slowly, giving Chan time to enter. He enters 3 minutes later. She looks up at him. He looks at her. No one says a word. The silence lasts 10 seconds. Then Chan looks away and begins to clear the table. The night before Park's departure, something happens that he didn't expect. He goes down to the kitchen for water and finds a thin silk belt on the floor by the door to the servants' room. Beige, the same as the one on Emily's dress. He bends down and picks it up. Puck knows all of his wife's things. It's her belt. She doesn't wear it without her dress. And she doesn't go to the servants' room. He stands in the hallway with the belt in his hand. The cold light from the window falls on his face. He doesn't shout. He doesn't call anyone. He simply turns and goes back to the bedroom. Emily is asleep. Her hair covers half her face. Puck looks at her for a long time. Then he puts the belt on her nightstand. Obviously, so she'll see it in the morning. He lies down and doesn't sleep until dawn. In the morning, he doesn't mention the belt. Emily is silent too. But when she gets out of the shower, the belt is no longer on the nightstand. She put it away. Puck pretends not to notice. He kisses her on the cheek, gets into the car, and drives away. But the car doesn't go far. At the first turn, behind a wall of trees, Puck tells the driver to stop. They stand by the side of the road, turning off the engine. Park looks at the road leading to his house. He waits. Meanwhile, inside the house, Emily orders all the staff to rest. She says she's tired and wants silence. The maid goes to her room. The cook leaves for the market to buy groceries for tomorrow. The guards remain at the gate, but they've been ordered not to enter the courtyard. Emily sits in the living room and waits. Chan waits in his room. The sun sets. The lamps in the house come on. Emily gets up and goes to the bedroom. She changes. Not into a nightgown. She puts on a swimsuit. Black, simple. She throws a robe over it. She leaves her hair loose. It falls in a black waterfall almost to her waist. She leaves the house through the back door and goes to the pool. The water is lit from below. The pool is empty. Only the trees rustle and the cicadas chirp. Emily takes off her robe, leaves it on a lounge chair, and wades into the water with her feet. It's warm. She submerges herself up to her shoulders and exhales. A minute later, Chan emerges from the shadows. He's also wearing swimming trunks. His body is lean and sinewy. He walks down the steps into the pool and swims toward her, slowly. Emily doesn't turn around, but she knows he's close. She feels his presence in the back of her neck. He stops 2 steps away from her. He left, Chan says quietly. Yes. Are you sure he won't come back? He said 3 days. Chan comes closer. Emily turns to face him. The water reaches her chest. Her long hair floats on the surface like black ribbons. Chan reaches out and touches her face. She closes her eyes. They don't know that Park's car has been parked around the corner for hours, that he's been staring at the emptying road all this time, that he's changed his mind about waiting until nightfall, that he called the guard at the gate and asked if everything was quiet. The guard replied, "Yes, everything is quiet. The lady is probably already asleep." Park got out of the car and walked along the edge of the road, in the shade of the trees. He went through the service entrance, which is unguarded. He rounded the garage. He saw the light in the pool from afar. He came closer. He saw Emily's robe on the lounge chair. He saw 2 figures in the water. Her black hair clung to Chan's shoulders. Her arms were around his neck. Park stopped. He didn't shout. He didn't run. He simply stood and watched, for just long enough for the image to be imprinted in his memory forever. Then he said, "Both of you come out." His voice was even, quiet, the kind that leaves no choice. Emily turned. Her eyes widened. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Chan turned pale. He took a step back and stumbled onto the edge of the pool. Park took off his jacket and carefully hung it over the back of the lounge chair. He sat on the edge of the chair, folded his hands in his lap, and waited for them to climb out of the water. He didn't look at them. He looked at the water. Emily emerged first. She was shivering, even though the night was warm. Water dripped from her hair onto the tiles. Chan emerged after him. He stood there, unsure what to do with his hands. His head bowed. Pak looked up and at each of them in turn. Emily started crying, tears mixed with the water on her face. "Get dressed," Pak said. They dressed in silence. Emily pulled a robe over her wet swimsuit. Chan pulled on his pants right over his wet body. Pak didn't rush them. He waited. When they were ready, he stood up and went into the house. No one looked back at the pool. The water continued to glow. The cicadas didn't stop chirping for a second. Inside the house, Pak said only one thing to Chan. "You have 5 minutes. Pack your things and leave. If I see you in the city in an hour, you won't have time to regret it." Chan bowed, deeply. He said nothing. He went to his room, and 4 minutes later he was no longer in the house. He left through the service exit and disappeared into the darkness, without even taking a taxi. Emily remained standing in the hall. She didn't look at Park. She looked at the floor. Her wet hair left dark stains on his beige robe. Park stood opposite her, his arms crossed over his chest. He didn't approach. He didn't shout. He simply looked at her as if he were seeing her for the first time, and immediately knew he'd made a mistake. "You destroyed everything," he said. Emily was silent. "Not because you chose him," Puck continued, "but because you did it in my house." He turned and went into the study. He closed the door. Emily heard the lock click. She stood in the hall for a long time, until the water stopped dripping from her hair. Then she went up to the bedroom alone. The next morning, Puck didn't show up for breakfast. He sat in his office, talking on the phone. He called everyone he knew in town. He told each one the same thing. "My wife cheated on me with my servant. If you're decent people, keep her out of your homes." The news spread within hours. By lunchtime, it was the talk of every street corner. Women whispered on benches. Men exchanged glances in cafes. The children didn't understand what was being said, but they sensed something shameful had happened. Toward evening, Emily tried to go out into the garden. The gardener, who always bowed to her, pretended not to notice. He turned his back and went into the greenhouse. The maid who had helped her dress for 2 years had resigned that morning, without even saying goodbye. Puck entered the bedroom that evening. Emily was sitting on the bed. Her hair was still damp from the shower. She looked up at him, red and puffy. "Can I leave on my own?" she asked quietly. "Without security, without a scene." "Your things are already packed," Puck replied. "They're downstairs." He didn't look at her. He picked up his documents from the table and left. Emily went down to the hall. One suitcase stood by the door. There was no one nearby. She took the suitcase and went outside. There was no car. She walked along the alley past the fountain, past the new rose bushes she had ordered, just to talk to Chan. The gravel crunched under her shoes. She didn't turn around. She didn't know where to go. And she didn't know that Chan was already waiting for her, not far from the gate. He was standing behind the trees. He knew that Pak had kicked her out, and he knew that there was no place for either of them in this city anymore. But they had another home, Sun's house. Chan took Emily's suitcase from her hands. She looked at him. He didn't smile. He simply said, "Let's go. They're waiting for us." They walked down the dark street together, and not a single star illuminated their path. Only the occasional streetlight cast yellow circles on the asphalt. Pak watched them from the office window. He saw them go out the gate. He saw Chan take her hand. He felt nothing but fatigue. He turned away from the window, went to the table, and pulled out a blank sheet of paper. He began to write a list. No names, no addresses, just the word "new" at the top of the page, because the old life was over. Pak's phone rang at 2 in the morning. He was sitting in his car around the corner, not far from the gate of his house. He hadn't planned on sleeping. Pak looked at the dark sky and listened to the silence. When the screen lit up, he picked up without hesitation. "Boss," said the guard, "the light in the pool is on." Pak didn't answer. He put the phone on the seat and opened the door. The night air was warm and humid. He stepped out onto the road and looked toward the house. Beyond the trees, nothing was visible except the black silhouettes of branches. But he knew the guard wouldn't call without reason. He knew the light in the pool at 2 in the morning was no accident. Pak slammed the car door and walked, not along the main road. He turned off to the side, where the fence was lower, where the bushes grew thicker. He didn't want anyone to see him approach. Not out of fear, out of a desire to see the truth with his own eyes, before someone had time to hide it. He walked quickly, but quietly. The grass didn't crunch under his feet. He rounded the garage, past the tool shed. Not a single dog barked. Pak knew every corner of his territory. He knew where the gate creaked, so he opened the one that didn't. He knew where the guards didn't work the night shift. Because he made the schedules himself, he entered through the garden door. Small, almost unnoticeable, overgrown with ivy. Only gardeners used it to avoid lugging buckets through the entire house. Puck slid the metal latch back and stepped inside. The garden at 2 in the morning looked alien. The moon shone brightly, but the trees cast black shadows that could hide anything. Puck didn't turn on the light on his phone. He walked by feel and memory. There was a fountain. There was a bench. There was the path to the pool, paved with light tiles that looked gray in the darkness. He heard the water before he saw the light. The pool was running. The pump hummed steadily, water spilling over the edge. Then he saw a yellow light. The lamps beneath the water were on, making the pool clear and bright like an aquarium. Puck stopped around the corner of the house. He didn't breathe. He simply looked to where the water met the air. He saw them. Emily was standing waist deep in the pool. Her beige robe lay on the chaise lounge. She was wearing a black swimsuit, simple and formal. Her black hair, long and straight, was wet and stuck to her shoulders and back. It glistened in the lamplight like black water. She didn't notice him. She was looking at Chan. Chan stood in front of her. His torso was bare. He held her hands, and his fingers intertwined with hers on the surface of the water. He was saying something to her quietly. Pak didn't hear the words. He saw only the movement of her lips and the way Emily smiled back. She smiled in a way she hadn't smiled at him in a long time. Puck watched it for exactly 10 seconds. Maybe 15. He didn't count. He simply memorized every detail. Her wet hair on his shoulders, his hands on her waist, their faces close together, closer than was appropriate between a boss's wife and a butler. Puck didn't feel anger. Not at that moment. He felt cold. A deep, heavy cold that sank somewhere in his chest and stayed there. He stepped out of the shadows. The tiles beneath his feet were warm from the afternoon sun, but he didn't notice. He walked to the edge of the pool. No one saw him. Emily was looking at Chan. Chan was looking at Emily. Park was standing 2 meters away, and they didn't know it. Then Chan looked up. Something made him turn around. Instinct. A chill down his spine. His eyes met Park's. Chan's face changed in a second. It turned white. He pulled his hands away from Emily so abruptly. The water splashed outward. Emily was surprised. She opened her mouth to ask what had happened, and then she saw it too. Puck was standing at the edge of the pool. His clothes were dark, his hair light, almost silver in the moonlight. He didn't move. He just looked at them. His arms hung by his sides. His shoulders were straight. His face was calm, like a man who had received an answer to a long-standing question and now didn't know what to do with it. Emily gasped. Funny. The sound had come out on its own. Without her will, she tried to retreat, but the water was in the way. She brushed her shoulder against Chan and almost fell, but he caught her elbow. He immediately pulled his hand away, because he realized that any contact was working against them now. Silence fell. The only sound was the water running off their bodies and falling back into the pool. Drip, drip, drip. Pack opened his mouth and said, "Both of you come out." His voice was even. No louder than if he were asking for coffee, but there was nothing human in that voice. Only fact. Just an order. Emily shuddered. She knew that voice. She heard it when Park talked to those who crossed him in business. And never before had that voice been addressed to her. They didn't move. 2 seconds. 3. Then Chan began to climb out of the pool. He climbed onto the edge. Wet, awkward, slippery. His legs trembled. Emily remained in the water. She looked at Park with wide eyes, and her lower lip trembled. Park wasn't looking at her. He was looking at Chan. At that, the way he places his feet on the tiles, the way he rises, the way he stands, straight but with his head down. "Emily," said Puck. She shuddered. He hadn't called her by her name in a long time. Only you, or nothing. "Get out." She climbed out of the pool. Her body glistened in the light of the lamps. Black hair stuck everywhere, to her back, her chest, her face. She stood in her wet swimsuit and shook, although the night was warm. Her robe lay on a chaise lounge 2 steps away, but she didn't dare take it. Puck stood between her and the robe. He looked at them both. Chan stood with his back straight, like a soldier awaiting sentencing. Emily looked at the floor. Water from her hair dripped onto the tiles and mixed with Chan's. The puddle grew. Park didn't shout. He didn't break any dishes. He didn't threaten. It was scarier than if he had done all that. "You," he said to Chan, without even turning his head in his direction. "Into the house. Pack your things. You shouldn't be here in 5 minutes." Chan opened his mouth. "Just 1 word," Park interrupted, "and you won't reach the gate." Chan closed his mouth. He bowed, deeply, so that his wet hair fell over his face. Then he turned and walked toward the house, quickly, almost running. His bare feet slapped on the tiles, then on the gravel. The sound faded away and died away somewhere near the back door. Emily was left alone in front of Puck. She stood in a black bathing suit, wet and shivering. Her long hair hung in heavy strands. She looked up at her husband. Her face was wet with water, but she didn't cry. She couldn't. Shock overwhelmed her emotions. "Puck," she began. He raised his hand, palm open, fingers straight, a gesture that requires no words. "Shut up." Emily fell silent. She looked at his hand, at his face, at his eyes. There was no hatred in his eyes, no pain. There was only emptiness, as if he had already decided everything before he came here. Puck lowered his hand. He turned and walked toward the house. Without looking back, he walked at an even pace, neither too fast nor too slow. Emily stood by the pool alone. The water in the pool glowed. The puddle at her feet grew. She heard Pack's footsteps fade on the gravel. Then the door slammed. Then silence. She was alone in a wet swimsuit by the pool at 2 a.m, in a house that was no longer her home. Chan had finished in 4 minutes. He hadn't taken anything extra. 1 bag, clothes, documents. He hadn't even changed. The same wet swimsuit under his trousers, a wet shirt on his naked body. He left through the service entrance. Without even glancing toward the main house, Park stood by the window in his office and watched as Chan's shadow crossed the garden and disappeared behind the fence. He felt no satisfaction, only cold exhaustion. He sat down at his desk and picked up the phone. He had a list of names in his head. He knew who to call first. Not friends, not family. Those who carried weight in the city. Those whose opinions shaped their reputations. The first call. The man with the deep voice who owned half the restaurants downtown. "Listen," said Puck. "My wife, Emily, she went to see the servant, Chan, the one who worked in my house. I want everyone to know." There was silence on the other end. Then a short, "Understood." Second call. The woman who knew every wife in town. Third. A gossip with a tongue faster than the wind. Puck gave a name, stated the facts, hanged up. He called for 2 hours, until dawn. To everyone who mattered. No one asked unnecessary questions. No one asked for proof. Pack's word carried more weight in the city than gossip. By morning, the news had spread, not through the newspapers, through word of mouth. Cooks told their dishwashers. Dishwashers told their cleaners. Cleaners told their delivery men. Delivery men told their store clerks. By 10 o'clock, the news that Pack's wife had chosen a servant was being talked about in every laundromat, every bakery, every office where women worked. No one called her by name, just Pack's wife, or the one, or, "Can you imagine what she's come to?" They spoke with a smirk, with curiosity, with disgust. But no one spoke with pity, because pity for such a woman would mean you yourself don't understand the rules. Emily didn't sleep that night. She sat on the bed in the bedroom, wrapped in a robe. Her hair was dry and tangled. She looked at the door and waited. She didn't know what exactly. Maybe he would come in. Maybe he would scream. Maybe he would hit her. But he didn't come in. In the morning, she heard him walking down the hallway. His steps were as even as always. She stood up, put on her robe. She went out. Puck was standing by the stairs. He was already dressed. His blonde hair was combed. He was holding a piece of paper in his hand. When he saw her, his expression didn't change. "Your things are downstairs," he said. "One suitcase." "Can I?" Emily began. "Leave on my own?" he finished. "Yes, without security, without a scandal. I've already made arrangements." He handed her the piece of paper. It was a short list. Address, name, Chan. It turns out, Chan left an address where his things could be sent. Pack took it from his personnel file. "He's waiting for you there," Pack said. "Or not. I don't care." Emily took the sheet of paper. Her fingers trembled. She looked at the address, but she couldn't see it. Only black letters on a white background. "Pack, I'm sorry," she said. He looked at her. For a long time. So long that she almost believed he was going to break down. "You're not sorry," he said. "You're ashamed you got caught. Those are two different things." He turned and walked into the study. The door closed. Emily went downstairs. The suitcase was by the front door. One. Not her favorite, not leather. A simple, black travel suitcase. She reached for the handle. The hall was empty. The maid hadn't come out to say goodbye. The cook hadn't peeked his head out of the kitchen. She opened the door and went out. The sun had already risen. The light fell on the paths, the rose bushes, the fountain. Everything was the same as yesterday, but different, because she looked at it as a stranger. She passed the gardener. He was trimming the hedges. When she reached him, he turned away. Not on purpose, not demonstratively. He simply turned his head the other way and continued working as if she didn't exist. Emily quickened her pace. The gravel crunched under her shoes. She walked down the driveway to the gate. The guard opened the gate without looking at her. "No car?" she asked. "No," the guard said. She walked out the gate, her suitcase rolling along the asphalt behind her. The handle felt awkward. The wheels creaked. Emily walked down the empty street, unsure where she was going. She looked at the scrap of paper Pack had given her. The address. She raised her hand and hailed a taxi. The car stopped. The driver helped her load her suitcase. Emily climbed into the back seat and gave the address. The driver nodded and stepped on the gas. She didn't know the address didn't lead to Chan, or not only to him. She didn't know that Chan had never been a simple butler, and that her life had just taken a turn of no return. The car drove through the entire city. Emily looked out the window. The same streets, the same buildings, the same people, but she felt like a ghost. She knew what they were saying about her. She could imagine the words spoken behind her back. She closed her eyes and leaned her head against the glass. 40 minutes later, the taxi stopped at a high fence. She got out. The house was large. Not as big as Pack's, but impressive. Black wrought iron gates, cameras in the corners, a guard in a booth. Emily said Chan's name. The guard looked at her, picked up the phone, and said something. Then he nodded and opened the gate. She entered. The yard was smaller than Pax, but well kept. Clean paths. A mown lawn. Chan stood at the main entrance. He had changed. Clean trousers, a white shirt. He looked calm, calmer than he had the night before. He took the suitcase from her. "Let's go," he said. "The owner is waiting." Emily was surprised. "Which master?" "My real one," Chan answered. "I'm not just a butler. I work for Sun." He didn't look at her. He carried the suitcase and walked ahead. Emily followed him. Her feet ached from the shoes. Her hair was tangled, and there were shadows under her eyes. She felt small and dirty. They entered the house. It was quiet inside. Expensive furniture. Paintings on the walls. It smelled of leather and men's cologne. A man came out of the living room. Korean. Short. Stocky. About 40 years old. His dark hair was combed back. He was smiling, but the smile wasn't warm. "Emily," he said. "My name is Song. Chan told me a lot about you." "He told me?" she asked, confused. "Oh yes," Song nodded. "You were part of the plan. Not the main part, but a nice addition." Emily turned her gaze to Chan. He stood with a suitcase and looked at the floor. "What is he saying?" she asked. "What plan?" Chan raised his head. His face was calm, but something like guilt flickered in his eyes. Or weariness. "I was sent to Park's house," he said. "I was supposed to keep an eye on him, his affairs, his connections. He paused. "You weren't on a mission. It just happened." Emily froze. "It just happened?" she repeated. "You slept with me because it just happened?" Chan remained silent. Song laughed, briefly, without humor. "Don't hurt him," Song said. "He's a good worker. And you're in my house now. I'll give you a room." "Chan, show her." Chan nodded and walked down the hallway. Emily watched his back. She wanted to turn around and leave. But where? She had no money, no friends, no name, only a dirty reputation and a suitcase of cheap clothes. She followed Chan. The room was small. A bed, a chair, a window overlooking the garage wall. Emily sat on the bed. Chan put the suitcase by the door. "I didn't know it would turn out like this," he said quietly. "It doesn't matter," Emily replied. She didn't look at him. She stared out the window, where there was nothing. 3 days later, Song broke the news. He walked into Emily's room without knocking. She was lying on the bed, staring at the ceiling. "Get dressed," Song said. "We have an important guest today." Emily sat up. "Who?" "Pak." Her heart skipped a beat. "Will he come here?" "He's visiting," Song replied. "We're old friends. I didn't know he was your husband until Chan brought you here, but it's too late now. You will stay in the maid's room, and do not come out until I give you permission." He left. Emily remained sitting on the bed. 2 hours later, she heard the sound of cars at the gate. She went to the window. Through a gap in the curtain, she saw the gate open. A black car drive in. Puck got out. He was wearing a dark suit. His blonde hair was perfectly styled. He looked rested, strong, confident. And next to him, getting out of the car, was a woman. A young Korean woman. She was about 26, slender, wearing a simple black dress. Her black hair was cut in a bob, chin length. She smiled at Puck, and he smiled back. In a way, he never smiled at Emily. She took his arm, and they walked into Sun's house. Emily stood by the window and watched them go. She didn't need to ask who this woman was. She knew. The new wife. Or not yet. But that didn't matter. What mattered was that Puck was no longer alone, and that she, Emily, she hid in the servants' room while he drank tea in the living room. An hour later, the door to her room opened. Sun peered inside. "The kitchen needs help," he said. "Chan is serving tea. You can help cut the fruit, and don't let Pak see you. If he sees you, I'll say you're my cleaning lady." Emily nodded. She stood up, tucked her hair behind her ears, and went out into the hallway. The kitchen was large. Emily picked up a knife and began cutting apples. Her hands were shaking, but she managed. Through the open door, she heard voices from the living room. Sun, Park, and a woman's laughter, light, pleasant. "Hannah, try this pie," said Sun. "Thank you. It's very tasty," the woman replied. Her voice was clear and young. Emily froze. Hannah, a beautiful name. Short. She stabbed the knife into the apple deeper than necessary. Chan walked through the kitchen with a tray. He put on gloves. He looked the same as he had in Park's house. Same uniform, same back, same hands. "Are you ready?" Song asked him from the hallway. "Yes," Chan answered. He took the tray with teacups and went into the living room. Emily watched from the kitchen door. She saw Chan bow. first to Park, then to Hana. "Tea, sir," Chan said in an even voice. Park took the cup. He didn't look at Chan at all, as if in front of him was not the man with whom his wife had cheated on him, but an empty space. "Keep working," Park said, just 2 words, without anger, without contempt, without anything. Chan bowed and left. He passed the kitchen, and Emily saw his face. It was white. He was alive, but something inside had died. Emily turned back to the table. She cut fruit and felt tears streaming down her cheeks, not from pity for him, from pity for herself, because at least he, Chan, had received a word from Park. Cold, empty though it was, he existed for him, and she didn't. That evening, Song invited Park and Hana to stay for dinner. Emily heard it from the room. She was told not to leave until morning. She lay on the narrow bed and listened to them laughing through the wall. Hana laughed more often than anyone else, brightly, freely, like a woman with her whole life ahead of her. Emily closed her eyes. She remembered the first time she saw Chan in Park's house, how he held the door as she walked past, how their fingers accidentally touched as he handed her a cup, how she began to look for excuses to be close. It wasn't what she had done that was scary, it was that she didn't regret it, until now. And now, lying in a strange room, listening to the laughter of her ex-husband's new wife, she realized she had lost. In everything. She didn't want Puck, but she didn't want this either. To be a nobody in a tiny room with a man who was using her as an accidental bonus to his plan. Toward morning, the laughter died down. The house fell asleep. Emily didn't sleep. She sat on the windowsill and watched the sky brighten. Then she heard the hum of a car. The engine started. The gate opened. She looked out the window. A black car was pulling out of the yard. Puck sat in the back seat. Hana was next to him. Her dark bob gleamed in the morning light. She rested her head on his shoulder. The car disappeared around the corner. Emily was left alone in the tiny room. She looked at the empty courtyard, at the closed gates, at the cameras that watched her every step. The city had woken up. People were talking about her. In the laundries, in the bakeries, in the cafes. They smirked. They whispered. She had become a nobody. And that was more terrible than any scream, any blow, any punishment. Emily's new life in Sun's house begins as a gray streak with no silver lining. She wakes up in a small room where the walls haven't seen a fresh coat of paint in a while, and the window overlooks the blank wall of a garage. The first rays of sunlight don't penetrate here. Instead, a pale light filters through, making everything look flat and lifeless. Emily sits up in bed. Her black hair has tangled overnight, and she combs it with her fingers because her comb is still in her suitcase. Dress. The bedclothes she slept in were wrinkled. The beige silk, which had recently been her protection and weapon, now looked like cheap rags. She got up and went to the bathroom. It was a shared bathroom, at the end of the hall. Emily waited her turn, standing against the wall. From behind the door, she could hear the sound of running water and someone muttering. It wasn't just her and Chan who lived in Song's house. There were 2 other men who kept order, and a woman who cooked. No one greeted her. No one looked in her direction. When the bathroom is empty, Emily steps inside. The mirror above the sink is cloudy, with a crack in the corner. She looks at herself. The circles under her eyes have become darker. Her skin has lost its luster. She turns on the water and washes her face. The water is cold, and it helps her wake up. She returns to the room, opens her suitcase and takes out a clean dress, a different color, not beige, dark blue, simple, without embellishments. She gets dressed, braids her hair out of the way and leaves. The kitchen is already working. A woman named Myeon, plump and silent, chops vegetables on a board. She doesn't look up when Emily enters. "What should I do?" Emily asks. Mia nods at the bowl of potatoes. "Peel." Emily sits down on a stool, picks up a knife and begins to work. Peelings fall onto a newspaper spread on the floor. Her fingers quickly get used to the movement. 10 minutes later, Chan arrives. He stops in the doorway. He looks at Emily. She doesn't look up. "Son wants to see you," he says. Emily puts down the knife. She wipes her hands on a towel and follows Chan. They walk down a long hallway lined with paintings of hunting scenes. Emily doesn't look at them. She stares at Chan's back, straight, tense. Sun is waiting in his office. The room is large, with heavy curtains and a massive desk. Papers and several phones are scattered on the desk. Sun is sitting in a chair, reading something on his tablet. When Emily enters, he puts the tablet aside. "Close the door," he says to Chan. Chan closes the door and remains standing by the wall. Song looks at Emily. His gaze is searching, cold. She remembers how he smiled on the first day. Now he doesn't smile. "I have a job for you," Song says. "You are an educated woman. You know how to talk to people. Guests are gathering in my house. Some of them are important. I need someone who will help receive guests. Not a servant, more like the lady of the house. For the duration of the receptions." Emily is silent. "Do you understand what I'm proposing?" asks Song. "You want me to play the role of your wife at meetings?" Song nods. "Smart woman. It's a shame you're so stupid in your personal life." Emily lowers her eyes. She doesn't argue. "I agree," she says quietly. "Okay, tomorrow is your first appointment. Get yourself ready. Chan will show you the dressing room. There are dresses there that will suit you. Don't disappoint me." Emily nods and turns to leave. "Emily," Song stops her. "Remember, you're not a guest here. If I tell you to smile, smile. If I tell you to leave, disappear. I gave you a roof over your head. Don't make me regret it." She leaves the office. Chan follows her. They stop in the hallway and Chan points to a door at the end. "There's a dressing room there. Choose something modest." "Did you know Song would offer me this?" Emily asks. "I guessed. Is that why you brought me here? To make me the hostess for his receptions?" Chan is silent. His face remains calm, but his fingers curl into a fist. "I brought you here because you had no other place," he says finally. "What would you do alone on the streets? Without money? Without documents? With a reputation worse than the plague?" Emily looks at him. She wants to say something mean, something that will hurt him, but the words won't come, because he's right. She goes to the dressing room. The dressing room turns out to be a large room with shelves on which dresses hang. There aren't many women's clothes here, but they're enough. Emily chooses a long gray dress with sleeves and a high collar. Modest. She's right. Then she finds low-heeled shoes. They're all foreign, but they fit well. She returns to her room, hangs the dress over the back of a chair, and sits on the bed. Her mind is empty. Emily tries not to think about what she's doing, not to think about being a pawn in someone else's game, not to think about Paku and his new wife. But the thoughts return. She remembers the first time Puck saw her, 3 years ago, at a party with mutual friends. He came up to her and said, "Do you dance?" She said, "Yes," and they danced all night. He was confident, strong, but not rough. He looked at her as if she were the only woman in the room. A month later, they got married, quickly, without a big ceremony. Puck said, "I don't like noise. You're my wife, that's the main thing." And she agreed. She thought love was about being chosen. When you're needed, when he comes home, and the first thing he does is look for you with his eyes. But after a year, he stopped looking for her with his eyes. He looked at the phone, at the papers, at the window, at everything but her. She tried to talk to him. He answered monosyllabically. She tried to be interesting. He nodded and went into the study. Then Chan appeared, the butler who was always there, who remembered what kind of tea she liked, who adjusted the blanket on her lap when she was freezing in the living room, who listened, just listened, didn't interrupt, didn't give advice, didn't turn away. She didn't plan to cheat. It happened. First, the glances, then the casual touches. Then one evening, when Park was gone for 3 days, she went out into the garden, and Chan stood by the fountain. They didn't say a word, just looked at each other. And then he took her hand. Emily closes her eyes and pushes the memories away. It doesn't matter how it began. What matters is how it ended. She's in a stranger's house. She's playing someone else's role. And the only person who brought her here isn't even her man. He's simply following his boss's orders. That evening, Mieon is preparing dinner in the kitchen. Emily helps her. She cuts meat, peels onions, and washes the dishes. Her hands are getting used to the work. The body is tired, and that's good. When the body is tired, the headache is less. Chan comes into the kitchen for a tray. He takes it and goes to serve dinner to Sun. Emily stays with Mieon. The silent woman suddenly says, "You're not the first." "What?" Emily asks again. "Not the first one he brought here. Chan. There was another one before you, also from a good home, also after a scandal. Her name was... It doesn't matter. She stayed here for 3 months. Then Song sent her to another city. Emily stops washing the dishes. Where? I don't know, but she didn't come back. Mieon falls silent and doesn't say another word. Emily looks at her hands in the soapy water. 3 months. The counter has started. The next day is the reception. Song has gathered 5 men in the living room, all Korean, all in expensive suits, all with cold eyes. Emily puts on a gray dress, braids her hair into a knot at the back of her head, and adds small earrings she found in the closet. In the mirror, she looks older than her years, sterner. It suits her. She walks into the living room. The dream imagines her as his assistant. Not his wife, his assistant. The men nod without asking questions. Emily pours coffee, smiles, asks the right questions about the weather and how things are going. She knows how to do it. 3 years at Pak's side have taught her this art. The reception lasts 2 hours. When the guests leave, Song calls her over. "Not bad," he says, "but your smile should be warmer, and don't look down on your guests. You're not the hostess. You're waitstaff in an expensive dress." Emily nods. She's not offended. Resentment is a luxury she can't afford. The days drag on. Emily wakes up, peels potatoes, chops onions, puts on someone else's dress, smiles at strange men. She spills coffee, accepts compliments that mean nothing, and goes to bed. Sometimes she hears guests passing by the door, loud voices, laughter, the clatter of dishes. She doesn't leave her room unless called. She doesn't ask questions. She doesn't look out the window for long, because there's only the garage wall there. Chan rarely catches her eye. When they meet in the hallway, he looks away. Emily does the same. There's nothing left between them. No passion, no anger, not even simple warmth, just awkwardness, and the feeling that they had both made a mistake that couldn't be undone. One evening, 2 weeks after their arrival, Emily hears footsteps in the hallway. Lots of footsteps. Voices. Laughter. She stands by the door of her room and listens. Sun is talking to someone. His voice is different, softer, respectful. It means the guest is important. "Puck, come in," Sun says. Emily freezes. "Hana, will you be comfortable here?" Sun continues. Emily steps away from the door. Her heart is beating so hard, she thinks she can hear it in the hallway. Puck is here again, and Hana is with him. She sits on the bed and clasps her fingers together. She mustn't go out. Dream had said clearly, "Don't show yourself." She's nobody here. If Puck sees her, Dream will say she's just a cleaning lady, or a new maid, or nobody. Puck won't recognize her, because he won't look at her. He never does. Emily sits on the bed and listens. The voices are muffled. Through the wall, she can hear Hana's laughter, light, pleasant. She imagines Puck looking at Hana, with the same look he once looked at her with, kind, attentive. A lump rises in her throat. Emily isn't crying. She's learned not to cry. Tears are water, and water disappears into the sand, leaving no trace. An hour later, there's a noise outside the door. Someone is walking down the hallway. Footsteps approach her room. Emily stands and takes a step back. The doorknob moves. The door opens. Hana stands in the doorway, a young woman in a black dress. Her hair is cut perfectly. Her skin is clear. Her eyes sparkle. She looks at Emily with curiosity, not anger. "Oh," says Hana. "Sorry, I was looking for the bathroom." "It's at the end of the hall," Emily answers. Her voice is even. She's surprised she can speak calmly. Hana doesn't leave. She stands in the doorway and looks at Emily. Her gaze slides over her face, her dress, her braid. "Do you work for Sun?" Hana asks. "Yes." "Assistant?" "Yes." Hana nods. She doesn't know who Emily is. To her, she's just a woman in a small room, a servant, a staff member. Emily feels this knowledge burn inside her, but she keeps a straight face. "You have beautiful hair," Hana says. "Very long. I think it's hard to take care of that length. You get used to it," Emily replies. Hana smiles, sincerely, without arrogance. She's not an enemy. She's just a woman who found herself in Emily's place. Or maybe Emily was in her place, depending on how you look at it. "Good night," Hana says and leaves. Emily closes the door, leans her forehead against it and closes her eyes. She lost not only to Puck, she lost to this girl who doesn't even know they're enemies. Because Hana doesn't see Emily as a rival. To Hana, Emily is nothing. Someone who mops floors and chops onions. Emily doesn't sleep that night. She lies on her bed and stares at the ceiling. Images of the past replay in her head. There she is, walking through the garden in a beige dress. There Chan is serving tea. There she is, telling Pak she wants to plant roses. Every detail was a lie, even the roses. She thinks about what she could have done differently. Tell Pak she is lonely, ask him to spend more time at home, move out, get a divorce. anything but the butler's bed, but it's too late. The train has left, and even the tracks have been dismantled. The next morning, Emily wakes up to loud voices. Someone is arguing in the hallway. She gets up, goes to the door and listens. The voice of Sun and someone else. Not Pac, another man. "She can't stay here," the man says. "She's my assistant," replies Sun. "She's Pac's wife, ex-wife, and she's nobody here. She works, eats, sleeps. She sees nothing but her room and the kitchen." The man falls silent. Then he says more quietly, "If Pac finds out you're hiding her here, there will be problems. Pac won't recognize her. He's not looking for her. He doesn't care. He has a new wife. Are you sure Chan won't tell? Chan is my man. He will do what I say." The footsteps recede. Emily moves away from the door, so someone knows who she is. Someone thinks she needs to be eliminated. Sun protects her, not out of kindness, because he needs her, a convenient pawn. Emily gets dressed and goes to the kitchen. Mion is already working. There is fresh bread and butter on the table. Emily cuts the bread into thin slices. Her hands do it automatically. An hour later, Chan arrives. He looks tired. His eyes are red with shadows under them. He sits down on a stool across from Emily. "Did you hear the conversation?" he asks. "Yes. Sun will keep you here as long as he can, but if Park finds out, he doesn't care." Emily interrupts. "You heard what that man said. Park isn't looking for me." Chan looks at her hard. "You don't know him. He's not looking because he's already decided that you're dead to him. But if he finds out you're here, with Sun, he might think it was part of a plan. That song took you on purpose. Isn't that true?" Emily asks. Chan is silent. For a long time. "Not true," he finally says. "You really were an accident. I liked you. I like you. But I didn't plan it." Emily looks at him. She sees weariness in his eyes. And something else. Regret, maybe. "It doesn't matter," she says. "What matters is that I'm here now, and what will come of it." She picks up the knife and continues cutting the bread. 3 days later, there's another reception at Sun's house. This time there are more guests. 10 people, men and a few women. Emily wears a dark green dress, which makes her almost invisible in the dim living room. She serves drinks, clears empty plates, and smiles. No one pays any attention to her. At some point, the door opens, and Hana enters. Alone, without Puck. She looks around for someone. Seeing Emily, she smiles and approaches. "Hi," Hana says lightly. "Do you work at receptions here?" "Yes," Emily answers. "I wanted to ask, do you have a brother or a sister?" The question is unexpected. Emily doesn't understand what it's about. "No." "Aren't you from around here?" "No." Hana nods. She looks at Emily with interest, but without suspicion. "You just don't look like a servant. You have this." She searches for the word. "Posture. Like someone who's used to being waited on." Emily freezes. "I'm just working," she says. "Sorry." Hana is embarrassed. "I didn't mean to offend you. I just noticed." She leaves. Emily watches her go. This girl is sharp. She notices things others don't. If she keeps asking questions, she might figure it out. That evening, Emily tells Chan about it. They stand in the hallway in the shadows, where they can't be seen. Hana asked about me. What did she ask? Why don't I look like a servant? Chan frowns. She's smart. Park didn't choose her for nothing. Emily feels a pang of jealousy. Stupid, useless jealousy. "You have to keep an eye on her," Emily says. "If she starts digging..." "She won't dig. She has no reason. To her, you're nothing." The words repeat themselves. "You're nothing." Emily's used to hearing this from others, but when Chan says it, it hurts even more. "Good night," she says, and goes to her room. The days turn into weeks. Emily doesn't count them anymore. She gets up, peels vegetables, puts on dresses, smiles, pours coffee, goes to bed. At some point, she stops waiting for change, stops hoping, stops being angry. She becomes transparent, a shadow in the corner, a person whose presence goes unnoticed, but something glimmers inside her, a small flame that won't go out, no matter how much she tries to stifle it. Emily wants to go out, wants to leave, wants to become someone, not something. One night, when the house is quiet, she gets up, throws her coat over her pajamas, and goes out into the garden. Sun's yard is smaller than Park's, but there are trees and bushes here too. The moon is shining brightly. Emily sits down on the bench and looks at the sky. She remembers the night Puck caught her by the pool. If she could turn back time, she would do it differently. She wouldn't play. She wouldn't lie. She would just say, "Puck, I feel bad. Puck, I'm unhappy. Puck, I don't want to be your wife." But she didn't. She took the easy way out and fell into a difficult trap. "Emily?" She turns around. Hannah is standing 2 steps away, in a light coat, with her hair cut into a bob. She looks at Emily, surprised. "Are you awake too?" Hannah asks. "Me too." Hannah sits down on the bench next to her, at a distance, not close. "Puck fell asleep, but I can't," Hannah says. "I keep thinking about our move. We're looking for a new house. Puck wants everything to be perfect." Emily is silent. She shouldn't talk about her life, but Hannah doesn't know. Hannah sees her as just a woman. "Are you married?" Hannah asks. "I was," Emily answers. "What happened?" "You were wrong." Hannah looks at her with sympathy. Sympathy is the last thing Emily needs. It hurts. "Puck says trust is everything," Hannah continues. "If you break trust, you break everything. I try not to break it." Emily swallows. She wants to say, "You don't even know who you're talking to," but she remains silent. "He's a good man," Hannah says. "Just secretive. Sometimes I don't understand what he's thinking, but he's loyal. That's the main thing." Emily gets up. "Good night," she says, and goes into the house. She walks down the hallway, closes the door to her room, and leans against the wall. Hannah doesn't know. Hannah talks about Paku like he's a saint, and Paku is no saint. He's just a man who knows how to pretend he doesn't care. But Emily knows the truth. If he didn't care, he wouldn't have kicked her out so cruelly. If he didn't care, he wouldn't have called the whole town. If he didn't care, he wouldn't have brought Hannah to Sun's house to show her. Paku is taking revenge. Quietly, cold, perfect. And Emily is his best revenge on himself. To myself.